dia, Portugal!
In Portugal, there's a YouTube show full of fun facts you need to know. Carl rings the bell and the members show to the GMP morning show. Featured guests will come and they will blow your mind. The audience will do so in kind. The little vanity mixed with some insanity on the morning show with GMP.
Good morning, Portugal, and I'd like to welcome you to another fantastic day.
Hey, Gumpers.
Hola, bon dia, alegria. Munson here with Good Morning Portugal show, a live stream and the podcast at 9 o'clock this morning. We're joined by Heather Binder of Boots on the Ground Portugal. And some of you in the Portugal Club who joined us on Tuesday evening would have been lucky enough to meet Sarah Krieger. She's a friend. She was introduced to me by Heather, and she joins us at 9:30 this morning. So looking forward to speaking to both Heather and Sarah this morning. Sarah Krieger, Sarah Davey of Spartan FX, great to see you yesterday evening. Lovely to hang out with you. Actually, lunchtime and dinner time last night. So great to have you on the Silver Coast area, Sarah Davey of Spartan FX. Lovely meal at Bohemia. Shout out to the crew at Bohemia. They do some amazing steaks there at the moment. Bohemia, looking out across the bay here in San Martino de Porto. And popped down the lane. This is we took Sarah to a place. Me and Mrs. M took Sarah to a place where you probably wouldn't know it unless you know San Martino de Porto. I speak of Baia Cultural Bar as much as I possibly can and point people in the direction of Anna and Ricardo, who run the place. Ricardo's in the kitchen, Anna front of house, and they were some of the first friends we made here in Portugal. Remember going in there one evening. Can I get a takeaway from you? We were living in a hotel because, as some of you might know, the camper van broke down in San Martino de Porto. And we needed to eat some food, and I went out to get a takeaway in town. This was September or October of 2017, and Anna very kindly said, well, I can do you a takeaway, but we don't have takeaway packaging. Could you just bring the plates back in the morning? So I was able to take the plates. Actually, I think ceramics a little bit like these and traditional Portuguese. For those of you on the podcast, I'm holding up a Bordalo cabbage cup. And she's got all these lovely sort of Portuguese touches in the restaurant. We took some of her prized crockery, and of course, I took it back the next day. But what fantastic hospitality, friendliness, and fantastic food and drink as well in there in Baia Cultural. And some amazing talent, not only in the kitchen and front of house, but this guy, I think his name is Leonel Ribeiro. And don't worry about the bit at the bottom, the 8th of March. This is from one of his earlier posters advertising the fact that he was playing at the Baia Cultural Bar. He is so talented. There were, 20 people in the restaurant last night. It's not a massive space. And Wednesdays and Fridays, you can enjoy live music inside the Baia Cultural Bar. And he was playing his heart out last night. He wasn't very well. He had a bit of a sore throat. He was taking medication, red wine, and still gave, for me, the performance of a lifetime. Very gifted guitarist. He's got a kind of bass drum box, plays the harmonica as well. Very talented fella. So, Leonel, thank you so much for entertaining us last night. Great evening. Had coffee and dessert at Baia Cultural last night. Thank you very much, Anna and Ricardo. How are you this morning? Do let me know in the chat. Lovely gathering in the Good Morning Portugal chat this morning. And we've got James over there, Deagle, Antonio Barbosa, who we will return to in a little while. Thank you very much. Very important birthday today. Guess who is 100? No, not 100. 800. Guess who is 845 years old today? No, not Paul Richards. Hi, Paul. Good morning to you. Oh, there we go. Antonio, he's giving a game away there. I'm gonna read all of or much of your post on Facebook, if I may, in our Facebook group over there. Happy anniversary, Portugal, 845 years old today. I'll return to that. The Manifestus Probatum was the document issued by Pope Alexander III on May the 23rd of 1179. Remember it well. This declared the territory as an independent kingdom. You hadn't moved to Portugal then, had you, Antonio? Thank you very much for that coverage. Yes, okay. James Deagle. I think we've got Coach Turner in there. Milane from Winsurance. It's lovely to have you here every morning. Thank you very much. And I dare say we'll talk to the boss man, Nuno, tonight on the Dream Team show this evening at 9 o'clock on the Expats Portugal channel. Before that, at 7:30, talking to Daniel Reis of Reis and Pelicano International Wills when living in Portugal. That's the subject tonight for the Expats Portugal webinar, which I am proud and delighted to host for you if you want to find out more about that. Expats Portugal members can stick around for the lock-in part of the interview, and you can ask more personal questions of Daniel Reis from about, 8:15, that sort of thing. And we have another half hour or so of chatting with Daniel. And then we get ready for the Dream Team session between 9 and 10, where you can speak to all the top professionals in the migration business that are recommended by Expats Portugal. Maybe see you there this evening. Thank you very much for the memery, the mindful memery this morning, James. I'm going to save one of yours for when we speak to Sarah a little bit later on. It's very prescient. But let's see what's going on in the chat. And at 7:33 this morning, do you know what? I was up soon after 5:30 this morning. I had a little job to do this morning. Been out and about, seeing San Martino de Porto come to life. Been lovely. Been to the bakery, had a lovely egg and bacon butty. So yeah, up really early this morning and really enjoyed it. And every time I do that, I think to myself, oh, I must get up earlier in the mornings. It's so good. This is the best time of the day. And then I stay up until 1 or 2 and can't get up at that time normally. But yeah, it's really nice to be up early this morning. Bom dia, Gambas. E feliz quinta-feira, tudo bem? Well, the starting blocks are in place and the bubbly is chilling. Looking forward to many Portillo moments. It's a Brit thing. What are the Portillo moments then? That's for the general elections or the general distraction. What a load of old cobblers, eh, Coach Turner? Forgive me for being so cynical, but I mean, which of the butt cheeks do you think people will vote for? Same two cheeks of the two cheeks of the same backside, I think, as George Galloway puts it. Forgive me. God Squad tip of the day, lying on your back. I guess this is how you prepare for a general election. Or is that bending over? Let me see. Lying on your back, bend your knees until your feet are flat on the ground. Then slowly lift your hips until your torso and thighs are in a straight line. Oh, matron, hold for about 20 seconds. I think there's a bit of pelvic floor action going on in this as well. So lie on your back, bend your knees until your feet are flat. Okay, bend the knees. Your feet are flat on the ground. Then slowly lift your hips until your torso and thighs are in a straight line. Yes, okay, got it. So it's like a thrust, isn't it? An upward thrust from the ground. Who doesn't like an upward thrust from the ground first thing in the morning? Any time of day, frankly. Hold for about 20 seconds. This is another good one, isn't it? For when the vicar walks into the room. Repeat 3 times. This is great for your core and the glutes and is easier than a full reverse plank. What's a full reverse? Yeah, okay. I'm visualizing that in my mind's eye. Excellent, Coach Turner. Fantastic. And if anyone is doing this and wants to send us a video, please feel free. Oh, got something in my eye. Deagle was in at 7:42. I think weather's turned, has it not, over there in Belfast, Deagle? Bon dia, Carl and Gumpers. Normal services resumed. Almost 24 hours of rain in Belfast. 12 degrees overnight. Very uncomfortable. Open window to hear the rain. Okay, you open a window, you hear the rain, you close the window, it gets too warm. You need air conditioning over there, says Deagle. Good to see you this morning. Lots of love to your household. Bon dia, Gumpers. Feliz quinta a todos, como está? From James this morning with a mindful moment. The feeling that any task is a nuisance will soon disappear if it's done in mindfulness. There you go, your tax return, queuing up for things, bureaucracy. Do it mindfully and all will be well. I think there's some truth in that, isn't there? From Thich Nhat Hanh. Mindful dad joke. I meditate, I burn candles, I drink green tea, and still I want to yell at people. It's how it goes, isn't it? It is. That's such a such an accurate depiction, I think. I was going to say of modern life. I'm sure it's always, 'twas ever thus, right? It's all relative, isn't it? Thank you, James, for those. I'll share one of your visuals now, and one of them I'm going to come back to for later on. And who was that? That's this one. But a great Benjamin Franklin quote. So I shall come back to that later. What is this Star Trek Jellicoe thing? But that's on the screen for everybody now. Who is this guy? Is that the captain in the Star Trek Jellicoe franchise? I thought my wife was joking when she said, "Leave me if I did." Okay, I thought my wife was joking when she said she'd leave me if I didn't stop singing "I'm a Believer." Then I saw her face. That might be it. I'm just going to remove your comment to see if that is it. That is it. That is it. And then I saw her face. I sang that in pantomime once. Now I'm a believer. Excellent. Okay, thank you very much for that, James. We will return to Benjamin Franklin later on because I think it's very appropriate to the conversation we'll be having with Sarah Krieger at around 9:30 this morning. And she's talking about having an expat identity crisis, which has already ruffled some feathers from one of my correspondents. Hold on a minute. How much of this can I read out? When moving abroad, there is no such thing as an expat identity crisis. There is only people experiencing identity crisis, period. Well, that correspondent wasn't at all happy about Sarah's assertion, and she knows that. I mean, when we spoke to her on Tuesday night, she was, kind of voicing the responses of that she sometimes gets, and I think she used the phrase, "What is this BS expat identity crisis?" Well, we'll find out more at 9:30. Something's wrong with my ticker tape. It's not scrolling properly on the screen. Let me just turn it on and off again and see if that works. No, it's just scrolling along the bottom. Anyway, you can still read it, which is the main thing. Bon dia, Carlito, from James this morning. Good to see you, of course, James, as ever. And thank you very much. As I received your memes this morning and as I read out Coach Turner's God Squad tip of the day, I do thank you both, gentlemen, for your daily service and contributions to the show. And it's turning out that way for Milen as well, isn't it? Good morning, Gumpers, from Milen at Winsurance. Windy and fresh morning and Cassin. Hopefully, and I wonder what the weather's like as well there this morning, Elaine. Just my British sense of humour. Don't worry, you don't have to answer that. Must be Portugal o'clock, Carl. In Belfast, it's 8:33. All right. Bon dia, alegria. Feliz quinta-feira. Greetings from a sunny Minho this morning. Bit of Tony time for you. Man in the Minho. We missed you last month. We'll be looking forward to talking to you again soon. Michael Barton, we'll come to your happy anniversary, Portugal. 845 years old today. We'll come back to that. Great to see you yesterday, Mike and Karen. Bon dia this morning from a sunny Miranda de Corvo. It was an excellent gathering, wasn't it, yesterday? Good to see you, Bobby, as well. Karen and I had a great time at the Storytellers Palace yesterday. It was great meeting everyone. Yes, Larry, good to see you there. Atty, Corey, Frankie, Kai. Who else was there? Sarah, of course, Bobby. An excellent gathering, and Michael and Karen from Miranda de Corvo, you popped over as well. So excellent to see you. Lovely gathering around that table yesterday. Oh, and Chinese Terry was there, of course, as well. Good to see you, mate. Greetings from an oh-so-warm Algarve. Summer is coming. 26 degrees today. Get that sun cream out. But what is it right now? Is it about 5 degrees? And it'll be rising to 26 later on. I wonder. Sarah Yerman, yes, how is Steve? Let us know if you will, Sarah. I hope he's healing well. And bon dia, Antonio, because Antonio is in. We'll be talking about him a little bit later on as well. Great service as well. Daily service from Antonio over at the Portugal Club. And I'll be talking about a couple of your entries, as it were, over there on the Portugal Club as well. Larry's here as well. Yeah, great to see you twice yesterday. Bon dia, nice to see you last night at my new office with very long hours. Yes, you did put in a very hard day yesterday, Larry. In the Biocultural Bar, Anna and Ricardo are the best. I think you may have heard my earlier comments. Neil Diamond wrote that song, I'm a Believer. He did, didn't he? He wrote that, and then the Monkeys picked it up and ran with it. Bon dia, alegria, Gumpers from T-Duck as well. Good to see you here this morning, my friend. How are you this morning? And on the dad joke meme, I think Jellicoe is a play on Jericho. The guy is an admiral or something. Well, that's really nailed it. Good morning, people. Thanks, James. Good effort. Good morning, people from Lee McGrady. How'd you get on the other day, Lee, at the government office there? Hope all went well. This morning, I've read Portugal is the oldest nation state in Europe, having established its current borders in 1139. Oh, slight conflict and fact check there. Is it 1139 or 1179? I'll read a bit more of that in just a moment. Barak, you know what? I wanted to drop you a line, Barak. Will you do for us? Can I invite you this morning to do your Barak Unplugged? Things people need to know when it comes to moving to Portugal. Fancy doing that next Tuesday night? Are you free? Are you able to do that for us about 8:30? Would that be okay? I wonder. And congratulations to Portugal, says Milene, and feliz aniversario to Portugal. Let's have a little bit more of a look at that then. This over on our Facebook group, and I imagine this will get cut and pasted to the Portugal Club as well. Taking you there now, and just getting rid of scrubbing off all my personal correspondence. You don't need to see all of that. Messages may come through. If you send me a messenger note now, it will come up live on the show as I add this to the screen. So there you go. Good Morning Portugal Facebook group. Well, I've forgotten how many of these we've got now. I think we've got a Facebook page and a Facebook group. And it's just about okay hanging on in there at Facebook. But really, I think its days are numbered, aren't they? It's certainly in relation to how much fun it used to be many years ago. It's just it's turning into a kind of short attention span TV channel, isn't it? With the occasional useful contribution, communication between people. Anyway, Portugal is 845 years old today. Congratulations, Portugal. The Manifestus Probatum was a document issued by Pope Alexander III on May the 23rd, today, back in 1179. This declared the territory as an independent kingdom. When popes could do that sort of thing. You see this, I'm getting all these Facebook messages coming through now and notifications. If you send one now, you'll see it. Don't put anything rude on the screen. That's a red rag to a bull, isn't it, for some of you here? Right, back to Portugal's important birthday then. In addition to making Portugal's sovereignty official, it was also on this day that the Catholic Church legitimized Dom Afonso Henriques as king. Portugal thus became the Portucalense county, one of the oldest countries in Europe and independent from the Kingdom of Leon and Castile. I wonder, were there trumpets? Was there a fanfare? Hear ye this proclamation. At a time when the Catholic Church assumed the role of the vanguard of knowledge, guardian of civilization, and supreme authority over the kingdom of men, doesn't it still assume that role? Not that many people subscribe, or people subscribe differently to that notion. Despite the Treaty of Zamora of 1143, papal recognition was essential to legitimize royal power, and as such, recognition of its sovereignty for the rest of Christianity. It should be noted that this recognition was due to the fact that Portugal proved that it deserved it widely and not by way of grace, largely owing to the struggle for the reconquest and victories against the enemies of Portugal and Christianity. The national flag then, after the establishment of the Republic, a constitution decree by the National Assembly dated June the 19th, 1911, approved a new national flag that replaced the previous one. The national flag is divided vertically into two colors. Now, you'll know that, but let's dig a little deeper. Let's take a deep dive into the Portuguese flag here. So dark green and red with green on the side of the hoist or mast. That's useful to know. In the center, imposed on the union of colors, has the national coat of arms bordered in white on the armillary sphere in yellow and revived in black. The length of the flag is 1.5 times the height of the hoist. The division between the two fundamental colors is made with 2/5 of the total length occupied by green and the remaining 3/5 by red. There it is. We're seeing it there. Yes, so we're making sure we're not getting it upside down. Thank you very much. And the division, between the two fundamental colors, 2/5 of the total length. I hope you're keeping up with this. Occupied by green and the remaining 3/5 by red. The emblem occupies half the height, being equidistant from the upper and lower edges. I didn't realize there was so much involved in this. Thus, in the opinion of the commission responsible for the national flag, white represents a beautiful fraternal color. That's right in the center of the flag there, in which all the others merge, color of simplicity, harmony, and peace. And under it, sprinkled by corners of the first hard battles for the Portuguese nationality are wounded. If the first hard battles for the Portuguese nationality are wounded, then it is the same white color that, fueled by enthusiasm and faith by the Red Cross of Christ, marks the epic cycle of our maritime discoveries. Look at all of that going on in one little flag there. Fantastic. Red should appear in it as one of the fundamental colors because it is the combative, hot, virile color par excellence. It is the color of conquest and laughter, a singing, burning, joyful color. Remember the blood and encourage victory. Wow. For the green, I mean, flags I guess flags have changed, haven't they? They've become less important in some ways because all of this was in there and was such a strong emblem for people and such important imagery for the nation. Amazing. For the green, which had no historical tradition in Portugal, it was given as an explanation that in the preparation of the uprising of January 31st, 1891, the green would have appeared at the decisive moment when, under the fiery reverberation of the revolutionary flag, the Portuguese sparked the redemptive lightning of dawn. Wow, poetry. With regard to the armillary sphere, which had already been adopted as the personal emblem of Dom Manuel I, Primeiro, and has since been present in the national flagship, it enshrines the Portuguese maritime epic, culminating essential for our collective life. In turn, on the armillary sphere, the commission intended to make the white shield with the corners stand, consecrating the human miracle of positive bravery, tenacity, diplomacy, and audacity that managed to tie the first links of the social and political affirmation of the Portuguese nationality. I love this. And finally, thank you very much for this, Antonio. Finally, the commission understood that the white shield of corners should be surrounded by a wide crimson strip with 7 castles, considering that these are the most energetic symbols of national integrity and independence. So are each of those castles, like the castle at Leiria, Orang, are these the great castles of Portugal, or are they just symbolic there, Antonio, I wonder? Absolutely wonderful. Thank you very much for that, Antonio Barbosa, our man in the Minho this morning. 15 degrees at the moment in the Algarve, and I'm not 100 yet. Just feels like that sometimes. Lord Travanca, all rise. Yes. Oh, the Portuguese is wondering. I thought this was, for a moment, I was thinking it's Portugalish there, who is Lord Gilchrist. But no, it's the Portuguese are wondering, hold on a minute, Lord Travanca, I lived near there. I didn't realize there was a Lord Travanca. Well, you do now, Portuguese. We'll see you soon, mate, on the show. Loving our correspondence, our to and fro, and we'll see you soon on the show. Yeah, you've got a Lord down the road, Barak, who I did try and introduce you to a little while ago. Bon dia, bem passos from Squire of the Shires. Morning, Squire. OMG, Carl and others, you can confirm the age of Portugal. Yes, indeed. No, not 842, 845, isn't it? Yeah, it's got to be 8:45. I've done the math. I think I've trusted Antonio to do the math on that. I think it's 8:45 today. The data is wrong in terms of borders. Algarve was only finally conquered in 1249. Oh, there you go. All right. Thank you very much for that, Antonio. Point of order, Chairman. While I heard that a random commenter on Facebook said Portugal was born 855 years ago, so that's now a fact. This is not getting any easier or clearer. Should we say Portugal is about 850 years old? We'll average it out for the time being, and we'll take it from there. We'll leave it there for the time being. Yes, facts. Fact in inverted commas. Good morning from Gaelish. Jacqueline, great to see you here this morning. How are you? Lovely to see you. And bon dia from Joan van Groningen as well. Good to have your company, Joan. How are you this morning? É verdade. If it's on Facebook, it's true. Thou shalt not question the almighty book of face. 8:45, there you go. I think it was a typo. Amazing history knowledge on the flag. I knew about 10% of it. Very informative. You're welcome, Deagle. Today, my typist is a little busy. Fair enough, Milan, you are forgiven. So 8:45, we will go with that for the time being, or thereabouts, perhaps 8:50. What else have I got for you before we have Heather join us at 9 o'clock this morning? This we didn't have enough time to go into in any deep way yesterday. According to a report by Expresso, the government has stated that there is a risk of Portugal being suspended from the Schengen area due to a delay in installing the systems necessary for the entry into force of new border control systems in the European Union, in the EU. The issue involves equipment that must be tested and validated by July. And it sounds like the man who sat on the bacon slicer, Portugal, are behind. They got behind with their work with this. May, June, July. Not long to go now, Portugal. The date by which member states must make a declaration of readiness. I mean, a declaration of readiness. Is that just the same as saying they're ready? Or maybe it needs to be a memo. But whose procedures have not yet been completed. Oh dear, if we don't succeed, we reach July and we will be suspended, said the Minister of the Presidency, Antonio Leitão Amaro, highlighting the huge problem for Portuguese tourism. Yeah, that the penalty could bring, blaming the previous executive, led by Antonio Costa, for the delay, which approved in March the authorization of expenditure of 25 million euros it's going to cost, but did not launch the tender for the acquisition of equipment, which will now have to be acquired for the direct award. Maybe between us Gumpers, we've got a few old computers in our lockups and sheds. 25 million, we could use that wisely, I'm sure, and donate a few computers into the Portuguese Schengen border system there. So a little bit behind with that. Let's see what happens with that. Maybe the concern and worry and lighting a bonfire underneath the appropriate officials will get them moving with that. Thank you very much for bringing that to our attention, Owen. I think that came in yesterday. And this also came in from Owen a little while ago. What's this? Last night I had a nightmare that disco music was making a comeback. At first I was afraid, I was petrified. Thank you very much for that. And the big Lego Pastel Donato, just in case you didn't see that just recently. Isn't that fabulous? Don't want to be treading on that Pastel Donato, do you? You don't want to be treading on a Pastel Donato generally, but especially not a Lego one. And what better to go with a Pastel Donato than the British hierarchy of needs? I saw this and thought, yes, that's very, very good. I like this. British hierarchy of needs. At the bottom there, a cup of tea, a biscuit, and a nice sit down. If you can't have a nice sit down, you can have a cup of tea and a biscuit. Where are my biscuits gone? Somebody's taken my Maria biscuits. I've got my cup of tea ready for when I'm chatting with Heather. And yes, at the pinnacle, I think this is heavily influenced, of course, by Abraham Maslow. The solitary cup of tea. It is a balm to any British being. Fantastic. Thank you. I can't remember where I saw that, but whoever generated that, thank you very much indeed. Heather joining us in a few more minutes. Actually, no, it's 9 o'clock now, but just squeeze in a couple of quick comments before she joins us. Bon dia, Malta. Car shopping today for my daughter. Oh, by Randy, where does somebody who knows about these things, i.e. you, go to buy a car? Let us know what you're thinking. Owen, morning to you. Just talking about you. If Portugal is 845 years old, how is Ponte Lima 900 next year? I'll leave that hanging there. I declare that as of this date, I am ready to begin the process of actually getting the project done. Yes, I think there's a place for you in the new British cabinet when that gets decided there. Excellent political speak there, James. Let's give her a nice big round of applause. Heather Binder, everybody. Here she is.
Hello. Hello.
Hello, your fabulous microphone glowing in various colors of the rainbow. Isn't that beautiful?
I know. I moved it like closer because I was watching some things about that, and half the time it's far away. But why not show it off, because it's cool and
it really is.
You can hear me better.
It's mesmerizing and hypnotic. So if I get carried away staring into it, just give me a little bit of a prompt or a digital slap of some sort. How's it going there? How are you this morning?
I am okay. I've got my British tea with milk, because that's how I do my tea, believe it or not. And
when did you start that habit? You're not a coffee girl, then. You're a British tea drinker, right?
Yeah, well, I like coffee milk, which is really milk with like this much coffee. That I love. But I grew up drinking it that way, tea and coffee, of course. But my great grandmother was from England.
Oh.
And so my mother had that habit. We always did tea. We always did milk and tea. So that's like super normal. And she taught me young to make her the good, perfect cup of tea. So.
Oh, okay. Well, I can't let that go without.
I was gonna say I'm American, so I can't.
No, so you said it now. I've got to put you on the spot. You said you were taught how to make the perfect cup of tea.
Uh-oh.
Pray tell.
Oh yeah, no. Well, nowadays we have the kettle, which is cool, but like in America, you don't have the kettle, so you heat up water probably in the microwave.
Hold on a minute.
You know,
oh, this is going horribly wrong already. Heating up water in the microwave.
No, I don't do that. I don't do that now because I'm much more civilized since I live in Portugal almost 3 years. And I have my tea kettle, which I don't know why those aren't a thing in the US because they're kind of awesome.
Well, do Americans not have kettles?
Well, old school, you would have like the kettle on the stove.
Yes.
But then, I mean, some people still do that, certainly. But yeah, then that sort of went out. So, you know, you have like the hot water tap. Like I had that growing up where you just had like instant hot water at the sink. That was kind of fancy. But then once we didn't have that, then it was microwave, you know? And
wow. Okay.
Yes.
So,
I have Earl Grey tea that is English, I believe. But I don't have Yorkshire.
Isn't it? It certainly sounds English.
I love her. Yeah, I love Earl Grey tea. Is it English? I guess it is. What's that?
It's a funny thing, the English in their tea, because of course Portugal is the common link here. Catherine of Braganza went to be because she was being married into the English royal family, and she took with her tea, as I understood it, because everyone at that point in England was drinking beer or gin all the time. Because you know, this is the English excuse for that is the water wasn't safe to drink, so we have to drink gin or beer.
Have to stay hydrated. I mean, come on.
What a breakfast, right? Tea and toast these days, gin and whatever, probably just gin, and a potato or something like that back in the day in the UK. So she came over and gave the British the gift of tea. Now I'm not sure if they were drinking it with milk at that point, but I think, and this was, I was going to say something about this yesterday because we were talking about, no, actually it wasn't yesterday. It was Tuesday when we were talking about olive oil and how the worst olive oil ends up in the supermarket. And I think the worst tea in the world ends up in England because I think whilst the British like tea en masse, they're not the most sophisticated tea drinkers. For a start, they have it with milk rather than, you know, in a more Asian way, drinking the purity of tea without milk. So, and they, you know, it's said that the milk was introduced to stop the china being stained, and you put the milk in the china first, and then you put the tea on top, and that stopped the china from being stained or the porcelain from being stained. So it's a massive.
So wait, you're saying the perfect cup of tea is without milk?
Yes, I think
I'm taking issue. So.
It's kicking off here on the Good Morning Portugal show. We had no idea we were going to be falling out over tea this morning, but it's turning out that way. Okay. Yes, I would say I have mixed heritage of East and West. And the Easterner in me is saying, yes, you know, proper tea, and not proper tea is theft to get into the politics of it all, but proper real tea and tea ceremonies. You don't put milk. You don't put milk in tea, do you? You're tasting the beauty of and the aromas of the tea leaves, right?
So I have never been to Asia yet, and I can only go by like movies and stuff that I've seen, really, because I haven't studied that. So, but yes, I would say that's true. And you know, when I do have like Asian tea, like the sushi place or Chinese or whatever, it is sans milk. So yes, I'm okay with that.
Same here. You know, we've got used to it in England, drinking tea with milk, builder's tea. You know, it's like strong, and there's milk in there. And there might even be 1, 2, sometimes 6 sugars for the British. That tells you something else about the lack of sophistication, one might say. And I say that
Aw.
that's my Western side talking, or my slightly judgmental Eastern side talking.
You just blew my mind, okay? Because
You're
like
welcome.
I've always grown up with the like, the English tea, the English, tea, and like that's the thing, like that's proper. Like Americans, we're not doing it proper. And now you're like, oh, Brits, we're so
What are
not
you
doing
like?
it proper,
There is a traditional way of making tea where you make it in a pot with tea leaves, and
Right.
then you'd have some nice china, and it would be a process, and it would be almost a ceremony. But that's not how most British people make British tea most of the time. They use a dirty old tea bag. I mean, a fresh one, but to connect with the point about olive oil. And the arse end of olive oil ends up in the supermarket, which is a nice British phrase, isn't it?
It is.
The less desirable end of olive oil ends up in the mass consumer market. The same is true of tea and tea bags, I think. My theory is, with tea leaves, is that the rest of the world goes to the tea merchants in India and China, Sri Lanka, wherever the tea is being made. The Azores as well, they've got tea over there, haven't they? And the tea buyers of other countries are saying, oh, beautiful. Yes, add some bergamot to that, and we've got Earl Grey, fabulous. These will be people from the greatest companies and countries. And then when it's down to just the floor sweepings of the leaves, that's when the British come in, and the British.
This is the crap we put in the bags.
Right? Powder. By the time it's got to a brown powder, a dust, and we'll make a really strong dark brown brew once enmeshed in a tea bag. That's the British mass tea market, and I do love it. Don't get me wrong. That's what I have in the morning. I have a Yorkshire tea bag, which is
you do with the tea bag, because I am actually a step up on you on that, because most of my tea is not in a bag at all. It's loose tea.
Well, I'm so proud of you.
It, and so I'm very fancy over here.
Well, that's wonderful. And if you no, honestly, I take my hat off to you. And if anyone thought that I had a butler serve me with a proper teapot in the mornings, along with my kippers, you're so wrong. In this beautiful cup, beautiful Portuguese mug.
I was going to say, is that a Bordalo Pinheiro?
It is. It is.
So is mine. Look at
from the factory. Did you go to the factory shop?
Of course, the factory store. I bought the set of
great,
this. I love it. Ooh. I know I could only get 2 of the mugs. I really, really like them. So,
very fancy.
The factory store. It's up the first floor. Well, in Portugal, second floor. Yep. Well, no, Portugal first floor. United States. I don't know. How do you say that? I still get confused by that, apparently. Go up the stairs.
Yes, 1 floor up. Whatever you call it, it is
go to the factory store, walk all the way to the back, go where you think you're not supposed to go.
Yes, that's what I thought.
I'm
going in anyway. I'm going in anyway. If anyone challenges me, I'll say, "Estranjero."
I know.
Yes.
And there's stairs. So I had a friend that took me the first time. So, because I wouldn't have found it. And then I just would have looked at all the other stuff on the downstairs, and probably not bought anything. So
you're right.
Yeah.
The factory shop and the seconds are upstairs, aren't they? And I got a butter dish as well. So I was delighted. This was only last week. But look, nice. Mr. S, Carl's mom is an expert. Tea is never drunk with milk in Asia. Now, you see, the funny thing about that is my mum now drinks tea in England.
Okay.
Really weak and with half a sugar, like the worst cup of tea I can imagine. But even though she's from the Far East, and should ideally be drinking tea, and she does, with Chinese tea with Chinese food. When she's at home, she's having London water. To add insult to injury, there is actually a scum on London water once it's been boiled. I think it's so hard that there's sort of calcified relics floating on the top of weak tea with half a sugar. Mum, what are you like? Right.
Wow. You're making Portugal sound, that much better, because our water, just good old water right out of the tap, is quite delicious, at least where I live.
Even out the tap. How about that? Wait, where did you go to get mugs? Where is this located? Excellent.
Oh, I'm sorry. So it's in Caldas da Rainha, which maybe Carl can type so that somebody can find it.
Yeah, I'm going to see if I can find the Bordalo shop.
And Bordalo Pinheiro, it's at the back of the park. So the Bordalo Pinheiro. So come to the Dom Don Pedro. Gosh, Don Pedro Park and enjoy
No,
that.
Dom
And then
Carlos Park. Dom Carlos Park.
Don Carlos. Okay, what did I say? I don't even know. Anyways, come to the park and walk around. It's really lovely. And then you can go right there and you go to the factory store. And just around the corner, there's a beautiful ceramics museum. That's quite lovely. The grounds are beautiful. Have you been there, Carl?
Do you know what? I haven't. I'm embarrassed to say.
Oh my gosh, it's really cool. The grounds are beautiful. Like I would have gotten married on the grounds if I could have. It's really, really pretty.
What a
And
lovely
it's
idea.
right there. It's like across the street and behind them, like up from the park, just a touch right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
T-Duck's absolutely right. Where can't you get mugs and ceramics?
Well, I know, but Bordalo Pinheiro, like, what do you say about Bordalo Pinheiro? Like, it's a super famous ceramicist. Caldish is very artsy. It has a huge history of ceramics, and that's just like a really big thing in this area, in this town. And yeah, it's really cool. I love it.
I'm just trying to find out a bit more about Bordalo because I'm sure we've got something that T-Duck came up with a long time ago. Yes, we do actually. Okay, so we've got a little bit of catching up to do. To answer your question, Barak, that's the link to the Bordalo Pinheiro online shop, and from there you can get the actual physical address. Come to Caldas de Rainha, go to the shop, and as T-Duck says, wherever you go in Caldas, you're not going to be far from a ceramic phallus or other ceramic item. Now, if I take that off the
well, that's true. You can also look me up and I'll come meet you and we can go.
How about that? We'll have a gathering.
Yeah.
We'll have a little ceramics gathering. But there is so much wonderful stuff to do.
Caldish. Yes.
Including
every time I go to Lisbon, like for whatever, and I tell people I live in Caldish, like they all know it, and they all are always, this is locals, always are like, oh, I love Caldish. Like it's just, because it's awesome. What can I say?
There was a moment last night when I was thinking, what am I going to talk to Heather about tomorrow morning? And then it turns out we've always got something to talk about, isn't it? Caldas bus station in Caldas, funnily enough, has one wall dedicated to Bordalo Pinheiro, and even the Continent Cafe. If you go to the Continent supermarket, there's a lovely wall of the ceramics factory that used to be up on that site as well, I think.
Wait, which Continent? The big one, the Modelo? Must be the big one.
Yeah.
I hate that store, but I love the little one. We go to the little one all the time. There's something Bordalo Pinheiro. Okay, I'm gonna have to look for that.
All right. So if I'm on the Portugal Club site, gmpvip.com. I type in Bordalo into the search. The search function on here is fantastic. You'll see there's something on the timeline about Bordalo, and if you go to the classroom, Bordalo 2 is the modern artist.
Well, yeah, which I also absolutely love.
You like him, right?
I love Bordalo Pinheiro too, or I love Bordalo too, and I love Bordalo Pinheiro too. But my husband always makes fun of it because he's like, do you want a plate? Looks like a piece of lettuce, and then the way he says it's like obnoxious. You're like, oh yeah, okay, good point. So. But I mean, why not?
Hold on, there's a really big problem here. Is it 1L or 2s?
It's one, I believe.
Yeah, but if you go to the website, Bordalo Pinheiro's got 2 L's. So and even on that logo there, it's got 2 L's. But then when you go to Wikipedia, it's 1 L. So that's a really weird thing, isn't it?
So next time I go to my dad's hospital in Lisbon to get his meds, I'm going to look. Because there's a really cool new Bordalo there that's like a chicken and like a chick. And it's really cool on the side of the hospital. And it's pretty neat. So I will verify. Or if I'm in town, I can look at the bat or something like that.
Yeah, there you go. So there he is. There's Bordalo.
Yes.
What a character. And he's the creator of the Zé Povinho character as well. The everyman.
The working man, yes.
Sticking it to the man, the John Doe of or the John Bull of this particular culture. His comic creation. Excellent. I mean, what a look. And I know you like a bit of cosplay, but that's a fantastic look, isn't it?
Yes, he's very steampunk. Yeah. Only he's not, but he could be. He's definitely got it going on.
He's got it going on. Absolutely. 1L there. There's 1L there, but there's two in the shop. for some reason. But anyway, you get the idea, Bordalo. There's our little trip down Caldash Lane. And
Penises and everything. Did you explain the penis reference, or we're just going to leave like people that don't know hanging on that?
Let's leave it hanging there, so to speak. Right.
Fair enough.
Fantastic. Anything in the news that's caught your eye? Anything you want to tell us from the world of migration and helping people into Portugal?
Oh, news as far as that goes. I've just had my head buried in visas and getting people through, not that I know of, really. It's it's the same old story with AMA. Like everybody's waiting and everybody's waiting and everybody's waiting. And then they'll ask me and I'm like, yeah, we're waiting. And my immigration attorney is waiting and has no special sauce to get appointments. My husband's, I was able to renew and my dad was able to renew online, thankfully, last year and early this year. But my husband's is up, residency card is up in June, and nothing on that yet. So I'm waiting till beginning of June, and I'm going to try again online. But I have a feeling that we're not going to get that lucky with him, and we're probably going to have to go in person.
But you're continuing to work hard on people's behalfs, helping them into Portugal. And I'm just seeing, scrolling on the screen, there was last time you were on, there was a GMP special offer of €100 off visa packages. Is that still the case, or have I made a terrible error on the screen?
No, we can do that. Sure.
Okay, thank you very much.
Just for you.
Putting you on the spot there.
That's okay.
Sarah Krieger joining us at 9:30, who you very kindly introduced me to. What a gal, right? We're going to have a chat with her about Evolve and Expat Identity Crisis.
She's amazing.
All right. Did you want to say some more? Talk about her behind her back before she gets here?
Well, just every time she speaks, I'm like, wow, I'm so not professional like that.
Okay, you and me both when she arrives at 9:30 then. Okay.
She comes from corporate America. I totally was rejected from corporate America. That is not my gig. I've always pretty much, except for when I had, the misfortune of having to work at GoDaddy or something terrible. But I did. But I'll tell you what, that GoDaddy knowledge, today, that is so valuable. I don't know much, but I know enough that it really makes a big difference because technology, it's all that stuff today. And I was in GoDaddy last night trying to connect a new domain and do all that kind of craziness. And so I'm not sure I did it right, but at least I have a better shot than someone that didn't have that training.
Yeah, I'm not sure about I do have some GoDaddy domains, or have some domains that are registered through GoDaddy. And I don't know. I use 123reg, I use GoDaddy, and I don't think anyone's cracked it. But maybe that's just the complexity behind the scenes, isn't it, of all the things that you can configure.
No, with GoDaddy. Okay, so I worked for them a million years ago. I'm 51. It was at least my late 30s, or mid. Okay, it was recession time. Anyways, that recession time.
That one, yeah. Okay.
When no one wanted a real estate broker, in Arizona at least. And so, I think they designed their website to be utterly confusing, and they changed it. They do it less now, actually. They would change it constantly. They never told us. So we're the employees and we're, walking people through stuff, and you get on the site and it's totally different. But they did it at that time, at least they did it purposefully so that people had to call sales, because then the salespeople would upsell them. And nobody said that, but that's 1,000,000% what they were doing.
Rascals. Okay, so maybe they do or they don't do that anymore. But interesting, and we might come back to there was a Portugal news headline: which company is the best to work for? And I'm with you. I haven't spent much time I was going to say enjoying corporate life, if that's not a contradiction in terms. But the best corporations in Portugal have just been voted on. We could return to that in a little while.
Oh.
In the meantime, a question in from Mr. S. What's going to happen if the decreto of extension ending in June for expired residency cards isn't renewed? So have you on that?
Well, it's going to be renewed. I mean, it has to be renewed because they're so behind, and they have so many people expired already or expiring. So it's going to be, I would be surprised if it doesn't extend till the end of the year, just,
Okay.
boom. But they're going to wait till the last minute because,
That's
it's
how it
Portugal.
rolls. That's how we
Yeah.
roll.
Yeah.
And because we've just had an election, all of the mistakes and difficulties can be blamed on the last administration at the moment, can't they?
We can always scapegoat someone else. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
fantastic.
like, old school there. So yeah. So if anybody has any expiring documents related to your immigration stuff, it's good through the end of June currently, but we do expect that to be further extended sometime in June would be my guess. I'll probably wait till like the 29th of June to freak people out.
Okay, fair enough. Well, talking of blaming other people and scapegoating them, perhaps we should look at that corporate life poll. Best companies to work for in Portugal. We've also got a crime report that Antonio, who's here in the chat this morning, curates for us. There's a very uplifting story in his continuing crime report. He's nearly into triple figures with the things he's reporting on over there. But there are a couple of stories over there that I thought were quite interesting. Before we do that, let's go and see who the Portuguese corporate folks think are best to work for. Microsoft occupies first place, Heather, in the top most attractive companies to work for in Portugal, according to Randstad Employer Brand Research 2024. The podium is shared with Ogma, the industry. I mean, that sounds like a fun job, and it is rocket science, probably. Industria Aeronautica de Portugal and Delta Cafés. Delta, much loved, of course, started by a great legend, Rui, is he Nabeiro, Senor Nabeiro, who we lost a couple of years ago, but a family-run company with a family atmosphere. I think it's a well-loved place, company, organization. I'd love to know more about it. So, yeah, they're in second and third positions, respectively. The top 10, the most attractive companies are Hovion, never heard of them, Nestle, Bosch, RTP, Oteixe, Real, Ana, the Aeroportos de Portugal. That's interesting, isn't it? That the airport people are happy, and Banco de Portugal. What are the most valued criteria, do you think?
Well,
Sorry,
the bank people are happy because the bank's never freaking open.
yes, that's a
I
very
would be every time I go to the bank, they're like, "Oh, we closed at 12. Like the doors are locked." Or 3. If you're lucky, it's 3, So yeah, every time I go to the bank, I'm like, that ain't so bad. You don't have to deal with like customers like most of your day. I don't know what they do like a ton of the rest of the time, but
if you get locked in though at 3, you're okay, aren't you? If you get in before they shut, they will continue to serve you, and you'll be in there.
So. I try to avoid actually going to the bank as much as possible.
I think you're not alone in that. Okay. And they were, I think that comes into it. The question you're asking there about, what do they do in there? They enjoy a good work-life balance, I think. That's 66%. The 5 most important criteria when choosing an employer are no surprise there: salary and benefits, work-life balance, work environment, career progression, and job security. What would you want to go back into the corporate world if those 5 don't cover it? Or would you never go back? Would you never darken the door of corporate ever again?
As someone that processes visas, the only benefit I see is that most of the people that worked in corporate America for a long time have done quite well with their 401k and their investments. And, they usually have some pretty substantial assets because, of course, then you have people like me that are mostly self-employed, and we didn't have benefits like that. And we didn't have, even in America, even Social Security doesn't count your self-employed income towards your Social Security. So you kind of get screwed in America with Social Security. I know I looked at like my highest earning years, and unless I was paying myself as an employee, that was the only way I had Social Security benefit towards retirement. So I am paying more attention to that. So I would say the biggest benefit would be that more security for later. But they also beat that into you, and then they tie it to health insurance, at least in the United States, and everybody stays at these sucky jobs that, because they're tied to the health insurance. So
it's all about the future, isn't it? It's all about suffering now, possibly, and working hard now. Such that
It's not all about that, but that's what America will, brainwash you into if you let it.
But not you, right?
Well, I moved to Portugal, so
Yeah,
I cut my biggest expense with healthcare and housing myself,
Yes.
by moving to Portugal. So it just depends. But honestly, that was a huge impetus for why I wanted to move. Was just thinking about how am I going to provide health insurance, like as we get older, like what are we going to do? Before the pandemic, my husband's job was providing group healthcare at least. But then he lost that with the pandemic. So that really had me thinking. Thankfully, I got us out before the end of the pandemic, and we were able to, transition to here. It certainly was not the only impetus. Obviously, I loved Europe, and I really wanted to, I'd been to Portugal 3 times before I moved, so scouted it pretty extensively. But
Well,
yeah, I would. What's that?
It is a biggie, the cost of living, or the cost of being healthy and having healthcare. Totally get that.
Well, what's an interesting thing is that I've had a couple clients that were like, because I'm looking at people's financials, right? So they were very comfortable,
Mm-hmm.
and I've had to say to people like, "Why are you still working?" And it's so but I figured it out because this one gal that just arrived a few days ago, actually, she said, in the US, you're beat over the head that one catastrophe, one accident, one medical thing, it can wipe out millions.
Yeah.
And so we're literally taught, at least in the United States, that just like all we need to do is just work forever. Yeah. And so it's this weird. So actually, she's, I think, in therapy for that, because it's like, so when you need therapy to realize that you have enough money to chill out and retire.
Wow.
But that's an awesome reason to need therapy, if you ask me. Like,
if
you need therapy,
yeah.
I'm thinking I'm good with that reasoning. But I didn't realize that. But then I have another very close friend that is the same. And so I'm like, I think there's actually like a whole pandemic itself of people with that mentality.
Yeah.
In the United States, at least.
Don't take your foot off the gas, because you just never know what might happen. Absolutely, I totally understand that. I did use too broad a brush talking about Asia, of course. In India, which is also in Asia. Thank you, Nanu. Good to see you here this morning. We always drink tea with milk. Yeah, chai, of course, boiled with milk sometimes, and lots of sweetener. And that's how it works, isn't it? Each culture goes off on its different tangent about how it likes its tea, and there's certainly a generalized Indian way.
I love the Indian tea masala. Yeah, that's so good. Love it.
Yep. So there you go. Thank you for that, Nano. Thank you for being here this morning. So as well as the cost of healthcare, another reason to be here in Portugal is the security and safety. And
safety. Hello.
Yep. Hello. And we've got, just very quickly before Sarah Krieger joins us, we have a thread over at the Portugal Club, portugalclub.com or GMP VIP. 99 comments on here. Now, I wasn't sure about this, I'll be honest with you, when Antonio suggested putting it on here, but it's turned out to be a really special and excellent service. So thank you, Antonio, for your continued service on this. And it's like a court report, a crime report. And very interesting to see that in 2023, over 1,000 missing children were reported in Portugal. According to the police, all were found. Isn't that a fantastic bit of news here in Portugal? And the other one, before we go to Sarah, a Portuguese immigrant in Luxembourg. This is interesting because I think this will be of interest to Americans watching in terms of how the gun law and how the Portuguese manage the firearms here. Portuguese immigrant in Luxembourg returned to Portugal upon retirement. There are a lot of Portuguese people in Luxembourg, and they earn a lot of money going over there. It's a place to go and live the American way that you were talking about, and earn a lot and then come back to Portugal ultimately. However, he didn't leave his firearms that he legally owned in Luxembourg, but decided to bring them home because the laws are different in Portugal, and he knew it. Reports Antonio here. He ended up arrested and faces a conviction of 2 to 8 years in jail. So if you're thinking about that, think
Whoa.
very carefully. You can have firearms here in Portugal, but they're very closely controlled, regulated,
Right.
and you can't just be, getting guns willy-nilly, because you might face a similar situation. 2 to 8 years in jail for
That's
unauthorized.
horrific.
Yep, it is.
Oh my gosh. You would think they would just confiscate them. Like, oh, okay, you can't have these here. We're going to confiscate them. But no, they're like, you're under arrest.
Yes, absolutely. So there you go. Thank you, Antonio. The court report, the crime report over there at the Portugal Club. I'll put a link to that. It's criminal facts in Portugal is what Antonio calls it. And of course, I mean, when he first talked about it, he was saying, Portugal, like everywhere, there are some wrong and some bad apples, and bad things do happen occasionally. It's all relative, and we do live in a relatively safe country. And he's reporting on that darker side of life over there. But it's actually a strange way, quite refreshing that there's so little of it.
Aren't we're still rated like the 7th safest country in the world.
Isn't that lovely?
So yeah.
Yes.
Last I saw, that was the last stat. So that's a huge thing. That was an increasingly important aspect.
Yeah. When Chris was on from the agency, he said, yeah, we're rated 7th, but when you look at the countries that are at the top, they're like New Zealand and Finland, where people
honestly,
there's nobody there anyway to cause any crimes. Although they live so far apart, or they're so happy,
they're happy despite the rain and the Netherlands.
So well done, Portugal. But if you are interested in a bit of a crime and criminal report, pop over to the Portugal Club and see Antonio F's excellent work over there. Let's give her a nice big round of applause now and bring her onto the screen. Sarah Krieger, everybody. Welcome, Sarah, to the Good Morning Portugal show. Now, we had the pleasure of your company last Tuesday on an exclusive Portugal Club recording, and here you are on the Good Morning Portugal show. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Thanks for having me again, Carl.
Great to see you in your beautiful home. Some might think, oh, she's got one of those nice Zoom backgrounds, but that's actually your beautiful home, isn't it, in Bomboral?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I bought it about a year and a half ago, and it didn't look like this when I bought it. What a shock. It was quite dark, and dingy is the word probably that Americans would use. But luckily, my husband is quite handy, and so he refreshed everything with a nice fresh coat of white paint, including the ceilings, and then he also does some woodworking. So I don't know if you can see behind me, but there's some light sconces on the walls that he made out of wood, and he refinished the floors and created the stairs with a nice pine wood. So. Yeah, so I don't know if I can.
He's amazing.
Anyway.
Sorry to do that to you, but we're zooming in to have a better look. He's done a great job. He is a handy fella, isn't he?
He is amazing because he's also a chef. Okay.
Well, we need to talk about that,
and he's also really sweet and nice looking. And so it's like, I'm like, what is this? Like a trifecta?
He's got everything, this guy.
I know. I'm like, wait, you cook this like and I haven't even barely had any of this food, but it was really good what I did. And he's handy. I mean, he's kind of my dream guy, minus his wife and my husband. And
all right, hands off, Heather. He's mine.
I know. Hold
easy now, ladies.
Tight.
Easy now, please.
On there. Yes. No, but really, a handy guy that can cook. Like, come on.
I did kind of hit the jackpot.
Yeah, smart. That's all I can say. Very smart.
He too, to be fair as well, because you're an amazing combination. And did you notice that hint there? I haven't tried much of his food. Heather is looking for a further invitation, I think, and me too, by the way, because before we start talking about expat identity crises, we should talk about terrain as well, it was a pleasure to find out about your terrain project and the pairing of. Not only can he paint and make things, he's as Heather says, he's a chef as well, makes delightful food and very handsome, incidentally too.
See, Carl thinks so too.
Yeah, absolutely. I've fallen in love with him just from this conversation.
Right.
And you're a sommelier, aren't you? So this combination of the pair of you, him cooking, and you're a sommelier, and you have obviously a great sense of style and space here. You are creating these events where the best of Portuguese food and drink can be savoured prepared by the pair of you. Terrain is it a .com? Terrain.com?
It's actually terrainfarmtotable.com because we
I'm going to put that on the
specialize in
screen.
farm to table events.
All
Yeah.
right. Let me just put that on the screen so everybody's got exactly the right thing there. But tell us more about that before we talk about Expat Identity Crisis, if you will.
Sure. Sure. Well, now that we've confused anyone who's listening,
Yeah.
I thought we were going to talk about Expat Identity Crisis, and now we're talking about food. But who doesn't love to talk about food?
Well,
So,
and when Heather and I get together on the street,
Yeah, I was going to say it's my fault.
we never talk about the advertised subject, or maybe for the last 2 minutes of the show. So stay tuned for that. We will get
right.
It's
Well,
always
so-
a fun conversation. It just never actually goes linear. I'm not very linear.
That's
Sorry.
okay. That's
Go
keeps it
ahead.
interesting, right?
Right. Sure.
so.
I keep getting invited back, so I guess.
Right. Something's working.
Yeah.
Well, so I can share just a quick little bit of information about the seasonal business that my husband and I started last year. Well, technically, we started the business in Spain about 3 years ago, but we created our outdoor dining space, our event space in Bombarral last year on our property that we own. And if you could imagine, this property that we purchased, when we first saw it, of course, the outdoor space was kind of in shambles and there was junk everywhere and there was a ruin. And but we saw this potential. What a great shot. So that's one of the views of our garden, our yard, as we would call it in the US. And we saw these amazing views of the countryside with the vineyards, and it's a nice open, flat piece of land. And we said, well, maybe if we could clean this up and take down the ruin and build a big pergola, we could create a space where we could have farm to table dining events. And this was our dream, him being a chef and me being a sommelier. We said, maybe one day we can own a space where we can bring people together and serve a communal meal. And I pair obviously the food with the wines, the local wines. We always feature local seasonal products. So Adam will visit the local farms and walk through the gardens and see what's growing. And then depending on what's in season, he'll create the menu around that. And so every event that we have up to 20 to 24 people. And it's usually people are coming from all walks of life. We have some local Portuguese, we have some foreigners. It's a nice mix. And everyone comes together and shares a meal at the table. We explain what the chef has chosen for the menu, depending on what's growing. We talk a little bit about some of the things that grow locally. And I always say that we are spoiled in this area, in the Silver Coast, and most of Portugal, honestly, in terms of agriculture and just the abundance of fresh produce, vegetables, and especially fruit in the area that we live in here. Bombarral is known for the rock pear, or the pera roxa, as they call it. And they make ciders with this, and you can make all kinds of interesting dishes with this. So we're happy to basically just showcase what's growing in season every summer, and then pair with local wines and create a space for people to make connections, build new relationships. In the beginning of the dinner service, people are usually, a little bit quiet and a little bit shy. And then by the end of the evening, as the wine gets flowing, then people are laughing and people are hugging. And, by the end of the evening, the whole table has just made new friends and new relationships. And it's just a magical thing that we're so happy to be able to offer.
Yeah, it's absolutely wonderful. Pera roxa, as you say, the roja, the produce in Portugal really is superior. And yeah, what I love, I mean, you can almost have a pear-themed evening, couldn't you, with the various ways of cooking.
Sure.
Have it with the main, have it with the dessert, have it in the drinks. It's fantastic. So that isn't what you came to talk about this morning, but I can't not let you talk about it, because I love the idea. And to have, 20 gumpers around the table one evening with you in Bombarral will be absolutely a wonderful thing to do. And get you back to talk about wine as well at some point, Portuguese wine.
Sure.
Maybe come and guest on our Good Morning Portugal Wine Club. The main business then this morning is to talk about the Expat Identity Crisis. And as you alluded to last Tuesday evening, some people do get their panties in a bunch about this idea, don't they? And I think you even said, what is this BS of an expat identity crisis? But it's realer, isn't it? And more likely than people might imagine.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So I get interesting reactions from people when I say that I help people with the expat identity crisis. So sometimes people are confused. A lot of people just never heard of this before. They don't know that it's a thing. And it is a thing. It's a real thing. Just Google it. There's tons and tons of people all over the world that talk about their experience going through this. Sometimes people will kind of laugh or roll their eyes. And I think it's because many people have this outdated idea of what an identity crisis is. So a lot of people think of the stereotypical middle-aged guy who like buys a flashy sports car and starts coloring his hair and, you know, covering the gray and like has an affair with a younger woman, you know, like this is kind of the quintessential stereotype. And okay, yeah, that is a version of identity crisis that does happen to some people. But that is really the minority. And identity crisis, I think maybe the word crisis is just, it sounds a little too maybe provocative or over dramatic for some people.
Crisisy.
Exactly, crisisy. So
it does sound a bit crisisy. You're right.
Right. It's not always a crisis, as it were, for everyone, but maybe a better way of framing it up is to call it an identity shift. And this happens to well over half of foreigners that move to another country. Most people go through, whether they realize it or not, they go through a psychological process where when the roles and responsibilities and relationships and norms that used to be a part of your life that helped you to make sense of who you were and kind of how you show up in the world, how you impact your environment, when those things suddenly change dramatically or go away, like disappear altogether, most people, when they start to realize that, they start asking themselves really big, important questions. And for expats, this tends to happen not right away. It doesn't happen like right after you get off the boat or off the plane. It's because your head is too full of, you know, just overwhelm and just getting settled in the first few months and like, yeah, figuring out how to get your internet working and like collect your packages and find stuff at the supermarket. But after a few months, when you start to get your bearings and you're no longer in that kind of survival mode, what happens to a lot of us is we start asking questions like, we kind of look around and go, well, what now? Like, what do I do with myself now? Like, who am I here? Nobody knows who I am. Nobody knows my backstory. Nobody knows like what I'm known for. And you might start having feelings of like, is this my best life? Is this the dream that I thought I was going to have? Because I had an idea about a dream life in my head, and maybe things are not shaping up quite as dreamy as I thought they would. And so this is a natural process. This is totally normal if you're going through this. And there's an opportunity here because on the one hand, when you show up in a new country and nobody knows who you are, then it can feel kind of isolating and kind of terrifying, like nobody knows anything about me here. On the other hand, it's an opportunity to be whoever you want. You get to rewrite your story. You get to create the story that you want, right? So you get to choose new habits. You get to, you know, become a better version of yourself. You get to be really intentional about how you spend your time to create and shape this dream life that you want. And a lot of people don't realize that, or don't take the time or the intention to really sit down and think like, well, who do I want to be in this new chapter of my life? And what do I want to become known for? And how do I want to fill my days? How do I want to make sure that I don't lose the opportunity to create my best life? So the program that I created as a psychologist, it's a research-based program. And it helps people. I offer it as a workshop as well as through individual coaching. And we use validated self-assessment tools to help people to identify or even rediscover their inherent strengths or inherent gifts or talents, and kind of take stock of how they're currently living their life and ask themselves some important questions about is this the life that you want? Are you showing up as the kind of person you really want to be? And what do you really want out of life? And we tackle some of those fears and limiting beliefs that get in the way of becoming kind of the best version of yourself. And then we actually break down into specific actionable steps. What you can do, you get a personalized plan, what you can do to actually evolve into this new identity that you want, become this best version of yourself, and intentionally create the life that you really want, instead of showing up and kind of falling into, a routine or habits where, okay, you're doing okay, but it's not quite the life that you had imagined when you dreamt about moving to Portugal. You can actually create that life if you follow a methodology that helps you to build these new habits and start making changes to the way you think about who you are and who you want to be. So it's a really powerful program. And Heather participated in my last workshop, actually. So I'm really excited to be able to offer this. The workshops are on the Silver Coast, but I also do the coaching not only locally, but virtually as well. So anyone, anywhere can participate in the program.
Very good. Excellent. Loving this. And there was one, and I will come to you if you don't mind talking a little bit about your experience, Heather, in a way that's appropriate for you, obviously, because I'm sure it's like Vegas. What goes on in the workshops stays in the workshops, but
it is.
There might be parts of it you want to share. A couple of memes flashed across the Good Morning Portugal desk this morning. This is one of them. This is what we may avoid, right? Some people die at 25. We just bury them at 75. This is, if you feel that might be happening to you, this might be a really good opportunity to reassess that rather awful trajectory of that kind. The words of Benjamin Franklin there. And another thing that came this morning, I need to get it together. Not right now, but I need to. It might be a moment to seize the day, mightn't it? Is to sort of come on the course or work one-to-one with you and not to procrastinate it any longer. And just one other thing before we come to you, Heather, on that. I do get it how people are like, what? Identity crisis, blah, pa. But and I think it's really important to just to make a note. It's like a mental note, isn't it? Because when you are fresh and new, as you say, off the boat, off the plane, it's not really in your mind, is it? And in many ways, it's like, well, I don't want to talk about that sort of thing right now. But I think it's a really good service you offer, that it's buried there somewhere for when, as the moment as I describe it, peak pastel donata. When you when one morning, at 11:30 or so, when you're sat in your favorite place, having your coffee and your pastel donata, which was your dream and still might be, you think, oh, maybe there's something else as well. I've done this now. And it's that moment, isn't it, when you might think, that woman who was on the Good Morning Portugal show, now I know what she meant. and I'm sorry I dismissed it when I first got off the plane, because your mind is as you say, your mind is in a very different place at that point, isn't it? You're not interested in what's going to happen in a little while. You've got so much going on in that moment. This is not for you at this time, perhaps, but then sometimes it is. So Heather, do you want to pick up on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that this program is really good for people in like a variety of places, because I don't know that I was having the identity crisis, but I was having some work related, because my business changed and I didn't expect it when I first got here, and I kind of got thrown into what I could figure out, and and I didn't really have opportunity to be intentional and also really think about what I want to bring more to my life, which my word was tranquil. So I try to bring tranquility, because I'm a little bit of a type kind of busy person in my brain. And so it was really clarifying, and I got a ton out of it. And it was just really an amazing experience. And I can see even doing it again, like if I ever have the opportunity to retire someday, I can see like that being another thing, because that is often, a lot of people move here young and they're not ready to be retired, or they don't know what that means because they're only like 50 or, whatever. So there's a lot to being intentional and having mindfulness. And Sarah's just really amazing at asking the right questions and probing you and, taking you deeper, and, the psychologist training and all her professional experience is really shows. So I have to say lots of good things there.
So just to pick up on that, you'll know how to facilitate and draw things from people from the psychology point of view. But you've also moved around the world yourself, haven't you? You've got your own perspective on that, right, Sarah?
Yeah, that's right. I start every Evolve workshop by telling my story, my own expat story, which started for me in Belgium about 8.5 years ago. And my journey in coming to Europe from the US, it kind of wasn't intentional. I was offered a temporary work assignment abroad, and I almost turned it down because the timing didn't feel right. My husband was in the process of launching a new restaurant with a business partner in Charlotte, North Carolina. And
Wow.
I was really enjoying my work back in the US. And suddenly this opportunity just kind of landed on my lap. And I had always romanticized the idea of, living and working in Europe. But I just thought, I don't know if this is the right time. And I was like, and Belgium, like, I didn't even know where that was on a map. Like, I knew nothing about Belgium. So anyway, luckily I was working for a very large industrial manufacturing company. And I was very fortunate to work with some really wise leaders. And I had some good trusted mentors that helped to coach me and help me to see things from a different perspective.
Very
and
good.
So my husband and I kind of had to do some soul searching, and we realized, this might be the opportunity of a lifetime, and we might not ever get this opportunity again. Let's try it. And so we moved to Brussels, Belgium in the beginning of 2016. And the first 6 months were absolutely awful. I mean, they were terrible. It rained all the time. We didn't speak French. French is the main language that's spoken in the Brussels region. We were starting lessons, but I mean, we had never learned anything beyond bonjour before. So we really struggled with the language barrier. Of course, we didn't know anybody out there. And my husband had kind of the additional challenge of coming overseas as a trailing spouse. And I was like all consumed in my new role there, and had a lot of lessons that I learned the hard way working in an international office. I learned that the American way of doing things does not work very well in Europe. So I really had to like unlearn all the stuff that made me successful as a leader in the US. Did not work. And so it was a huge development opportunity for me. But for my husband, he quickly realized that in the expat community, of the expats that are, there because of a work assignment, usually the trailing spouses are women. It's usually the men that are in the leadership positions that are getting these opportunities to work abroad. And so he was just like a fish out of water. I mean, he would try to go to expat meetups during the day while I was at work, and he was just like in a sea of women, which is okay. But he just really struggled to find anyone that could really relate to his circumstances. So it took him a long time to kind of find his way. I mean, he went through more of an identity crisis in Belgium than I did, because I had my work kind of defining, giving me a sense of purpose. And he did eventually actually start 2 businesses there. He ended up learning French, speaking better French than me, despite we both had private lessons from a private tutor. But he ended up really flourishing there. And after about 5 years, my company went through a merger, and they wanted to send me back to the US. And by then I had drank the Kool-Aid in Europe, I guess. And we had just assimilated to life in Europe, and it felt more, that was more normalized to us. And going back to the US, then that felt weird. I was like, oh, did we used to live this way? This this feels strange now.
Wow, fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they call that reverse culture shock. So suddenly we felt more at home in Europe than we did back in our home country. And so we knew that we didn't want to go back to the US. So I ended up negotiating a severance agreement with my company, which they were not expecting. They were not real happy about that because they wanted me to stay. But I was like, look, I want to stay here in Europe. There's a restructuring going on. And, it's not possible for me to stay in Belgium with the company. So I just so happened to have purchased a flat in Spain on the Mediterranean coast in a town called Sitges. It's near Barcelona. And it was supposed to be a holiday home, a vacation house. But suddenly it occurred to me, maybe we could just move there. We could live there and we could just start over. And so that's what we did. So we moved to Spain. And that was in 2020, in the middle of the pandemic. So that was an interesting time to relocate.
Sure. Yeah.
And so we said, well, we always had this dream of wanting to do something with food and wine together, combining our passions. But of course, it was like a terrible time to start a restaurant or do like a catering business or something, right? So we said, well, what could we do? Well, at the time, you could still serve food outside. This was like kind of one of the loopholes, with the restrictions on food service. So we said, well, how the hell are we going to do that? We need like an outdoor kitchen. And then we thought, well, what if we got a food truck and we could park it somewhere and we could serve food outside? So that's what we did. We bought a food truck in Spain and we partnered with a local vineyard. And they had a beautiful space overlooking their vineyard and the mountains that they weren't using at all. And we said, well, why don't we just set the food truck here and serve some gastronomic tapas and pair it with your wine and maybe have some live music and set up a bunch of tables and chairs outside and see what happens. And they thought we were crazy. They thought, who on earth is going to like come into this, winery in the middle of nowhere for something like that? People came out in droves. Like it was just incredible. So it was a great start to the business. But we also experienced challenges in Spain. Yeah. We experienced it in that region, in particular in Catalonia. The mentality of the people is they are very, very proud of their culture. Nothing wrong with that. But they've been trying to separate from Spain for a long time. And so there are some beliefs that they have that make it very difficult if you're a foreigner to integrate and to connect and to fit in.
Interesting.
And they're not particularly welcome of foreigners that want to start a business there because they see that as taking away from jobs or opportunities from the local Catalans. Mm-hmm. And so after a couple of years there, we decided that it might be time to look at other places in Europe that might be a better fit for us and for our business. And we visited Portugal several times, always enjoyed it. And we kept hearing about Portugal as being a really great place for entrepreneurs. We said, I wonder if there's something to this. So it would have been late 2021, we visited Portugal and we did like about a month, kind of just drove across the border and started in the north and kind of worked our way down the country, visiting different towns, different areas to get a feel for different places. And we ended up finding Ericeira on the coast, which is about 45 minutes north of Lisbon by car. And we absolutely loved this town. I mean, the vibe there is just, there's so much energy and there's so much creativity and so much entrepreneurial spirit. And so we ended up moving there for our first year in Portugal. And we did tons of pop-up events and markets with our food truck and just gained so many supporters. It was a wonderful experience. It was so easy for us to run our business there compared to what we had dealt with in Spain. It was a total game changer.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, it was amazing. And then we finally decided we wanted to buy a property where we could host our own events instead of, going to different guest houses and markets and festivals. The dream was if we have our own space, then we can do whatever we want, whenever we want. We're not paying anybody rent. We're not paying a fee to participate. And that's where we found the property in Bombarral and made the investment there. So
love
that's
it.
that's a bit of the journey.
I really love that. And you know, and so you're not just, you know, I mean, not that there's anything wrong with just the psychological theory, but not only do you have that, you have your own personal experience as well, which you share, which I think is wonderful. And it's 1 minute past 10. So we've actually run out of time. And what I would suggest, because there's much more to talk about within this. I mean, we had a fascinating conversation, you and I carried it on with Heather as well, that there's something that upsets me about all these Portugal bashing groups now. And fair enough, people have got beef and they need to air it from time to time. But there's something about how what you're doing, I think, can help people from getting on too much of a slippery slope or going to the dark side, which I'd love to pick up and talk about a bit more. So is it okay with the pair of you if next time Heather is on, you come again, Sarah, and we talk a bit more? We can have a part 2 of this conversation and how important it is.
Absolutely.
Oh,
yeah, that'd be great.
Wonderful. Thanks, Heather. And just a few more comments then from our community who I think have received you warmly as well. I moved to Portugal because I wanted a shift in identity. Pam knows what we're talking about, right? Our idea of moving to Portugal was leaving the US behind and starting a new identity and a new way of life, not bringing anything from the US here. I have updated the term retired to no longer required to earn an income to live my life the way I choose. Yeah, retired is an outdated label. I think you're right there, James. So it's like having a word with yourself, the process. It is, isn't it? Or giving your head a wobble, as sometimes people say in the UK. It's an opportunity to recreate yourself. A new you, says Pam. I am no longer, if I am no longer this, who am I? A question that you can ask, I'm sure, during your workshop. I once read some research that when you speak a different language, your personality is slightly different. I find that when I speak French, I transform. Adjustment rather than crisis, possibly from James. And I'm sure that we can experience dramatic changes in life without the existential dilemma we face. And that kind of hits the nail on the head. It is an existential dilemma or a crisis or an adjustment. And then you can make of it what you will. And clearly you give some great help in that process with the Evolve program. And there's the website for finding out more. So for the time being then, thanks, Heather. Lots of fun talking to you. Drinking tea with you this morning about Bordello. And Sarah, thanks for joining us again. Welcome to our community, and we look forward to having another conversation with you at some point. So last words to you, Heather, first, and we'll come to a concluding thought from you, Sarah, as well. Heather, over to you.
Oh gosh, I don't know. I was just trying to keep my mouth shut so you
did a great job. You did a great job.
You know what it was? I was like, oh, this is what happens when I'm on, and poor Carl is stuck there trying to get me to wrap up. So that's my parting thought.
Well, we're lucky. We're lucky. We haven't got another show breathing down our neck, like giving us a hard time. And that's great, isn't it? Because these are important things you're sharing, and it's nice to have the time to do that. And
and Sarah's really, Sarah has a fascinating story, and there's more to it, and we'll definitely more to talk about that will interest folks for sure.
All right, cheers, Heather, and thank you for your continued offer. 100 euros off the visa packages. Heather busy helping people with that sort of thing, so get in touch with her at bootsonthegroundpt.com. And a last word to you, Sarah.
Well, thank you for having me, and I'm looking forward to joining again. I'll try not to take up the entire time talking next time. That is my specialty.
You didn't. I did the first half hour, so you're 100% good.
I'll tell you what, next time I'll just let you two do it, and I'll go and have a cup of tea.
You can just sit back. We can do that.
I'll go and have my pastel de nata in a cafe, and you two can just do the show. That'll be fine. That'll be fine. Sarah, thank you so much. Always interesting hearing you speak about what you do, and I love the Terrain Farm to Table project as well. So looking forward to our next conversation. Have a great day, everybody. Take care, and bye for now. Let's take that. Bye for now.
Thank you.